Ansible Provisional. We all know Ansible is a automation tool. The Vagrant Ansible Provisioner allows you to provision the guest using Ansible Playbook by executing Ansible Playbook from the Vagrant host. So that's something if you want to automate the installation process inside the Vagrant guest. In that case, you can use Provisioner. As I mentioned in last video, you can use Shell Provisioner, or you can use some automation tool provisioners such as Puppet, Ansible, Chef, Salt. So these are options. So what are the prerequisites for using Ansible Provisioner? Basically, you need a host with Vagrant installed, VirtualBox installed. VirtualBox is basically a provider, and a provisioner. In this case, I'm using Ansible Provisioner. In case you are not aware how to install Vagrant and VirtualBox, or you are not sure what setting needs to be done, you can refer the below videos which I recorded earlier on Ansible and Vagrant and VirtualBox. So I will share the video link in the description of this particular video. So you can take copy paste the link and search for those videos. Or here you can go to YouTube, just search with my name Yogesh space Vagrant. It will bring this particular page which is on how to set up Vagrant and VirtualBox. And if you search with keyword Yogesh Ansible installation, then it will bring you to this particular video which is on Ansible installation and lab setup. So that's something prerequisite before you start playing with Ansible as a provisioner. So now one question may be in your mind, why to use Ansible or any provisioner over the shell provisioner? Basically, shell provisioner is such as shell commands which you can execute inside your guest machine, or that can be a shell script also. But what is the benefit of using a provisioner, which is basically automation tool? So I will talk about Ansible this time. Ansible can do parallel run of the playbook on the multiple hosts. Let's take example, you are provisioning multiple Vagrant guest machines. In that case, you can do parallel run to configure multiple machines at same time. Next benefit, Ansible is able to support whole stack configuration. It means if you have to install web server, database server, or let's say LAMP stack for a simple example. So you can use Ansible. Ansible can create database for you. Ansible can add database users. Ansible can do other configuration which shell scripting can't do. So that's another benefit. Ansible is able to template the configuration file, whereas shell scripts are not. We all know about Ansible, like we can use templates in Ansible, which is basically to use files which got variable data which you can pass, or Ansible can get the information, but with shell script that's not possible. Ansible can be source control, that's another benefit. If you're using shell provisioner and you want to do a big stuff, let's say you want to configure LAMP stack, in that case you have to learn scripting. But if you're using Ansible provisioner, you don't need to learn any scripting language. Basically you have to just know the YML formatting, and you have to write the modules, or basically tasks, which particular module you want to use, what is your end goal, that's it. For that, basically for Ansible, there is no scripting knowledge required. That's a big benefit. So next thing, how Ansible provisioner works. When Ansible is defined as provisioner in the Vagrant file, it makes the use of playbook mentioned in the provisioner config to configure the target machine. So whatever the playbook you specify in the Vagrant file, Ansible executes, sorry, not Ansible, basically Vagrant execute that Ansible playbook on the guest machine. So I'm repeating, basically Vagrant execute the Ansible playbook on the guest machine. So how the process works? First, Vagrant creates inventory file in the base directory of Vagrant machine. Let's suppose you want or you have created a Vagrant guest directory. When you do Vagrant init with all the required configuration, you specify Ansible as provisioner. When you first time boot up that machine using Vagrant up, it automatically creates a directory in the base directory of Vagrant guest machine, which contains a inventory file. Then Vagrant executes the Ansible playbook with the options defined in the Vagrant file. Ansible make use of Vagrant user, which is the default user for the communication with the target machine, or you can say target guest. In my last video, I have mentioned default user is Vagrant and password is Vagrant for the guest operating systems. If you got some custom machine which you are using some different user, in that case you can define your config in that way. For the authentication, Ansible make use of SSH key based authentication of the Vagrant user for communicating with the guest. Next thing which is important, Vagrant user that got root level sudo access on the guest machine. But with Ansible, when you want to specify that Vagrant can become root, you have to specify that in the Ansible playbook file. So that's something I will demonstrate when I'm giving technical session. Right now, I'm only telling theory. So this is the sample, like how Vagrant inventory file looks like when you run Vagrant up. You can see this is the path. I am in this particular directory, which is Ansible guest directory, and path is .vagrant provisioners Ansible inventory vagrant underscore Ansible underscore inventory. This is the basically file. You can see it is using loopback IP and the custom port 2222. As I mentioned, whenever Vagrant machine comes up, it checks which SSH ports are already used, means the netted port. Then it automatically picks a free port and update this particular file. It is using Vagrant as SSH user. You can see here, this is automatically generated. I haven't added or updated this file manually. Then this is the private key. We all know this is a path of Vagrant private key. It is making use of that particular private key for communication with guest in passwordless way. How we can or we have to define Ansible as provisioner. Basically in Vagrant file you have to do this particular stuff, config.vm.provision Ansible. Here it means Ansible is provisioner now to Ansible. Ansible.playbook is equal to playbook. So whatever your playbook name you can define here. Your playbook name may be webserver.yml, lamp.yml, playbook.yml, or whatever name you have to define here. After that, and which mean this provisioner configuration is ended here. So one question may be in your mind where you have to keep playbook.yml file. If you don't specify any path, Vagrant considers that you have kept the playbook.yml file in the same directory where Vagrant file exists or present. So that's something. In case you want to use some custom path, let's say you want to use etc ansible playbook.yml, this is a complete path to file, then you can hard code, you can say /etc/ansible/playbook.yml, but it's good idea to keep your playbooks inside Vagrant guest based dir directory. One another thing you may be thinking, in case you got a role instead of a simple playbook, then how you can define. Let's say you got role with the name role, then you can specify role / whatever path to playbook. So you can continue in that way. So that's something easy. To keep this demo easy, I have kept the playbook.yml file in the base directory of Vagrant guest. So this is something when you run Vagrant up, how it runs. You can see here I got index.html, playbook.yml, and the Vagrant file. In Vagrant file, I have already defined how like Vagrant will use Ansible provisioner, and with this configuration, I'm configuring my target machine as a web server. So index.html is something which I have created with some dummy data. So one Once you run Vagrant up, it do the basic stuff. After that, at the end, it run the Provisioner. You can see here running Provisional Ansible. And this is the playbook basically. You can see all these are playbooks stuff. So whatever you define in your playbook, that will get executed. So that's something which is very useful. Next thing, let's say you have done your one-time configuration, but after that you want or you have made some changes in your playbook. How you can re-execute that playbook on your target machine? So simply cd to the path of the Vagrant box dir. For example, this is the path. After that, run Ansible playbook with the playbook name. It automatically attempt to write the playbook or run the playbook on the guest machine. So let's do some practical stuff where I can give you demo whatever I have just discussed with you guys theoretically. So this is CentOS 7 machine which is configured as a Vagrant base server, and I have already installed Vagrant and VirtualBox. Let me quickly show you version. And I have also installed Ansible. So this is Ansible, this is the configuration file. Okay, now I'm in directory where I'm going to create Vagrant box. So this is the directory path. I named it Ansible-vag, means Vagrant, and I have already run Vagrant in it with CentOS 7 image. Now let me show you how I defined Ansible as provisioner. I'm just editing Vagrant file. In case you haven't watched my previous video or you don't know concept of Vagrant file, please watch the previous videos as I mentioned, because that will be giving you idea what is Vagrant file, how the configuration is defined. I'm not going to repeat all things because there is separate video I've recorded for that purpose. Okay, this is Vagrant file. Like I have already discussed these options. I'm using CentOS 7 VM box, and this is the provisioner section. You can see here I have defined use Ansible as provisioner. This is the playbook. Like in current directory, search for or look for playbook.yml and execute it on the target machine when system is booting up. So that's easy. Now let me show you what I got in my playbook. In my playbook, I have defined all servers, become yes, become method sudo. So this is something I was talking, like we have to define that Vagrant user can become root using Ansible. So this is something important. Always keep in mind, if you want to run command as root, you have to specify in your playbook that any user can become root, and not any user, Vagrant user basically in this example. After that, I go to normal task to install HTTP package, then copy the index.html. If you see src is equal to index.html, which means index.html is present in the directory where I have kept the Vagrant file. So default guest VirtualBox path basically. And this is the destination. This need to be permission. After that, notify this particular service or the handler. Then create a rule for Apache, which is IP table rule, then save those rules and start the HTTPD servers. And this is basically handler. So this is very easy. You can refer my Ansible videos, which will give you idea how to define the playbook, how Ansible work. So, and let me quickly show you index.html file also, which is very basic one for this demo. I'm only using title, like this is Ansible Provisioner demo, and in text I go, this is quick demo how Ansible Provisioner work. This is web page on Vagrant guest and is Ansible config. Okay, this was something which I have configured. So let me give you demo how Ansible Provisioner works. So simply I will run Vagrant up. Vagrant init I have already done. Vagrant up, you guys know, like it mean we are bringing the Vagrant guest machine up with the configuration defined in Vagrant file and following the default configuration. it will run the provisioner also. So right now it is importing the base. In my Vagrant file, I have defined that port 80 on guest is forwarded with this particular port. I have done port forwarding because I'm running Apache server HTTPD. By default, it will be listening on port 80 on the guest. On the host side, it will be port 8080. So that is port forwarding I have set up. You can see this is port for SSH, which is forwarded with this particular configuration. On my host side, port number is 2222, which is forwarded with port 22 on the guest. So far it's going good. It may take a couple of minutes to completely boot up. Now Vagrant is updating the image, basically installing the latest packages updates. You can see here now it is basically Vagrant is running the Ansible playbook, so it will run all the tasks on this machine which are defined in playbook. So it is running first task as of now. So it just finished and our provisioner worked perfectly. All the tasks completed successfully. None of tasks failed. So in this way you can easily configure Vagrant guest machines using a provisioner. In our example, we used Ansible provisioner. So now let's check whether web server is running on the guest or not. So one way, from here I can run elinks 127.0.0.1 over port 8080. Okay, it is giving error, connection refused. Okay, I made mistake. Let me exit from here. It need to be 127.0.0.1 colon 8080. It means I'm saying try to connect this particular server over port 8080, and this is our port forwarding. You can see here this was the demo text which we got in the index.html file, Vagrant Ansible Provisioner, and this is something which we got. It means web server is running on target machine. Let me quit from here. Let me quickly log into the guest machine. In guest machine I can also show you that it is running Vagrant SSH. Let me become root quickly. I can do the CTL status HTTPD. Sorry, it is saying not such service. System CTL, sorry. You can see service is running. And here, I don't think I got elink. Install it. So I'm in server now. Here I have to run elinks and localhost IP I can specify if I want to run, or I can use the netted IP, whatever netted IP this got, over port 80. Here it will be port 80 because I'm inside server now. If I have to access it from the base machine, which is Vagrant base machine, I have to use the port 8080, which is I have defined in the Vagrant file. So our web server is running. So that's something Ansible Provisioner worked. Now let's do our next task. Let me exit from the Vagrant guest. Now I'm on Vagrant demo machine, which is our base machine. Now let me show you how inventory looks like. If I do ls-l, you will see these three files which we have configured and created. Let me do list the hidden files. You can see this particular directory which is created by Vagrant, where Vagrant stores all the configuration. about particular Vagrant guest. So provisioners, because I'm going to demonstrate provisional configuration, Ansible Inventory. So this is my current directory now. Let me do -l. This is the inventory file. Let me quickly show you inventory file. You can see here this is generated by a Vagrant. Default Ansible SSH host. This is a particular IP. Access it over port 2222. Use user Vagrant for Ansible SSH. Private key is this particular path, which is Ansible's private key. So that's something. Now let's suppose you have to run this playbook manually, because just a couple of minutes before, Vagrant ran this playbook for us. Let's say we have updated our playbook and we have to run it manually. So what we can do in that case, let me quickly show you. Let's say I'm editing the playbook. Here I'm adding a new package edition, for example. So here I'm not giving it any number. Install latest version of, let's say, install KSH. So, or any package, whatever you want. I'm just giving you demo. Let's say we have updated our playbook. Let's quickly set host key checking to false in the Ansible configuration file. For that, I can simply vi etc ansible ansible.cfg, which is the default file. Let me search for host key. Okay, it is commented now. Let me uncomment it. So it is set to false now. Let me try to run playbook. You can see it is running playbook now. It is checking Apache. Now it is installing KSH, which we just modified. It means in that way you can rerun the playbook with the updated data. So that's something I was trying to demonstrate. If you updated your playbook, you want to run it, only you can update host key checkings to false, or you can remove the entry from known_host file. That's another way. Whatever way you are more comfortable, there is no issue. Vagrant is not a, I can say, production ready. It is only used by developers, so there is no risk, according to me, to disable the host key checking. But again, follow whatever your setup recommendations or your enterprise requirements, so guidelines.